And there we go. Okay, guys, I think we're ready to start.
Yeah. All right. It's great to be with you all again. And I'm Jacqueline Courtney Swift with the Society. They become four.
Hang on just a second, Jackie. We had a little bit of background noise issue. Hang on just a second. Oh. Hang on just a second. Okay, all right, we're back in action. Sorry, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Yep.
All right, so again, it's a great pleasure to be with you. And we are at the Clifford Furman Preserve today. Last week we were at Alexander. Alexander was established by our group in 1940. This preserve was established in 1967. It was donated by Victor Furman and named after his father, Clifford Furman. Victor was a charter member of the society, which started in 1934. So we've been at this for about 86 years. So it's very still, very beautiful here right now, and I can't wait to bring you here, but we'll do our best today to give you an overview of the whole preserve. Some beautiful birds in here. There's red-eyed vireo I heard before, but if you can listen to the background while we're going through here, you'll hear beautiful bird song. So we are in a preserve that's just 5 acres. Last week, Alexander was 118, but this is 5. To visualize it, an acre is the size of a football field. So it's 5 acres, but it's extremely rare habitat, very important. This habitat is what is called a fen. And we're in a spot right now where I'm gonna ask Ron to pan a little bit so that you can see the 3 parts of it that lead into the fen, which is to the right. Behind me is north, and to my right would be a western. So the fen is very interesting. There are 3 kinds of fens, and very slowly a little bit, and you can take a look at what we call the marsh. That's a marsh up there, and you may be able to see a little stream, which is a spring, and then coming down through the stream is coming down through the woods, which surrounds the entire fen. The fen is a depression, and the woods is a hemlock hardwood forest. And then to my right, to the west, is a fen. So I just want to tell you about the definition of a fen, and then in a little bit we'll take a walk down there after we talk about the Lupa Grant and Riparian Buffer. We'll take a walk down into the fen to see what's down there. So we have this fen is one of the major wetlands. There are marsh, swamp, fen, and bog. And a fen is sort of like a bog, but it's a depression in the terminal moraine, and but it differs from a bog in that bogs are like a big bowl that catches rainwater, and the plants are fed by the rainwater. In a fen, we have this spring coming through, and the spring or a stream that feeds the fen passes through minerals. It picks up chemicals like calcium and magnesium, and that water goes through the fen and nourishes the plants there. So it's called a minerotrophic peatland, and that just means it's loaded with minerals. And some of the plants we have here, like the orchids, just love that. And so it makes it's a very specialized, very rare habitat and rich with minerals. So it's the plants are very unique. And we're going to talk a lot about the plants when we get into the fen. Our habitat here is classified by the Natural Heritage Program of the DEC as an S1. Now that's its status in New York State, and globally it's a G3. So an S1 means that it's critically imperiled. And there's only 5 or less known in the state, just like that. So again, there's sloping fens, mound fens, and lake edge fens. This one is called a rich sloping fen, and again, it's an S1, so very rare. And G3, that status means that it's vulnerable to loss. So we have a very rare place here. And again, it's only 5 acres, so within a small acreage, you can have a very special ecosystem.
So Jackie, could I just draw attention to something you just said? So you're saying that there are 5, potentially just 5 of these habitats in the whole state?
Known is a key word there. So
known.
There might, but these are known habitats. Yeah.
But they're still pretty darn rare then in that sense.
And, last year, the Natural Heritage Program verified that, confirmed that we suspected. And so again, this is a rich sloping fen. So this is a fen that's a hillside fen.
I'm just gonna make a quick note. So our intern Alex has posted a little bit of information from the New York Natural Heritage Program on rich sloping fen communities. So if you want to grab that link at some point. And Alex also put together a summary of some of the Natural Heritage Program places and their system for organizing rare habitats. So that's all really good stuff. Just, take time to look through that when you get a chance. Okay.
Yeah, we love natural heritage. That's one way we identify properties that need to be protected. We have a whole list of green properties, and a lot of our research comes from working with the Natural Heritage Program. Good.
Okay, great. We are all set.
What's that?
Robin, can you hear me, Robin?
Yep, we are all set. Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'd like to get into the plants later, but right now I'd like to talk about the rareness and the LUPA grant. Robin, do you want to get into that now? Because that's very exciting for us.
Sure. So I can just bring up a little bit about that, and then Jackie can talk about it too. But so a project that I've been working on with Jackie together, we submitted a grant for the Nature Sanctuary Society to the Lake Erie Watershed Protection Alliance, specifically for this property. So for the fen here. And it is a riparian buffer grant to help protect the water quality in the fen. And even though we're up really high in the watershed here, we do have a lot of farming neighbors and a lot of activity going on in the landscape around the fen. So the idea is to take a look at.
I became unmuted.
Oops, take a look at us. Let me see here. Help that. So the idea is to take a look at some of the threats to the water quality that may surround the fen, to engage with the neighbors, to talk to them about how they can create buffers on their property with native plants, how they can minimize the impact that their property might have on the fen. So there's a lot of neighbor engagement in that grant project and that sort of outreach. And yeah, it's just going to be a neat project. There's some volunteer efforts, which will probably not be this year. They may be in the fall or next year, but to do a little bit of planting, some invasive species removal, and to help try to protect the water quality in the fen. And we have some great neighbors who are going to be open to that. And then we have other neighbors who may not know about the fen, so we will talk to them, and that may help. Did you want to add some more to that, Jackie?
Yeah, one of the exciting parts is we'll be able to hire a hydrologist, and I have walked through with the hydrologist, and he's excited to go on this, and he will help us analyze the water flow, any impacts that might be coming from neighboring places, and that's exciting that we can hire a scientist like that to help us better steward property.
Yeah, so we're really grateful to the LUPA is the acronym for the Lake Erie Watershed Protection Alliance, but just to provide that funding to bring in the hydrologist and help keep this place protected, because it's a really rare and special habitat.
And kudos to your professor, because she helped us land this grant. She's a brilliant grant writer.
I like playing in the woods and playing with words, so to do some grant writing too. Jackie, I just wanted to let you guys know I'm going to be turning my video off for part of the time, because I think the bandwidth, it may help your bandwidth to have less video, going in general. So so if you don't see me, I'm still here.
That's what I was wondering for. Okay. So one thing you want me to talk about are threats to the preserve, and Robin mentioned neighboring possible runoff, which would actually create eutrophication, which is a state of like overnutrition. So for example, there's a couple of farms up here. If their cattle are somehow the waste is getting into the stream, that could over fertilize the situation. We don't see signs of that right now. We see a lot of cattails, but cattails are a plant that you see in a rich sloping fen. So we're not too concerned, but we do we're ahead of the game in all of our threats to the sanctuary. So I'm very proud of that. We had some yellow iris, an invasive plant up in the marsh here. And 5 of us, part of them were the Western New York Prism crew. We got in there and dug those out. We were mud from head to toe. And we had a pile like, oh gosh, 6 feet high when we're done. And it was enough energy and good work to take care of that manually, that patch of invasive. If we hadn't addressed that, they could have taken over the whole marsh. So we're right on top of our invasives. With the grant, we'll be able to get some help from possibly your class or class in the fall with honeysuckle and the other few invasives that we have. Multiflora rose is one of them. There's some moneywort. There's a little glossy buckthorn. But one thing we do, and we haven't done until about the last 10 years, is really do some restoration and some work on invasives. But with it used to be just leave the preserves alone, let them be. But now with all the information on invasive species in the past 10 years, we've become very active in removing invasives to protect the biodiversity. So that's a potential threat. Deer are actually a slight threat. They love to eat orchids. Later on, we'll talk about the orchids here, but we do have some deer problem, but it's not drastic. I have seen in Michigan, in the national park up there, the deer problem was so bad on an island, Mackinac Island, that they had eaten bark up to the 3 feet up the tree. So we don't have a really bad deer problem, but we do know that there's more than we would like to see in here. As far as other challenges, there are so many threats that can happen to sanctuaries. You can have trespassers, you can have ATV problems, but we don't have any of that here. So we're very fortunate here on that level.
Great, thank you, Jackie.
So Ron is going to tell you about riparian zones.
Sure. Okay. Hi, So we talked a little bit that some of the plans in the works for this area include riparian zones or riparian buffers. These are areas of vegetation that usually are along shorelines or along waterways. When these areas are filled with native trees, shrubs, and grasses and plants like that, they can be very beneficial to humans, to wildlife, and to the overall water quality of these waterways. So riparian buffer zones, they're really important for negating flood damage. They act almost as like sponges, where they'll hold excess water, usually temporarily, but they just slow the flow down, and they'll hold the water and let it either be used by plants. Plants will kind of suck it up and use it for their processes. Also, when the water is being held in these areas, it makes it a little easier for it to permeate down through the ground into the soils. Also will recharge the groundwater tables. Just by being held in these areas and slowed down, it gives them a chance to permeate and be able to enter those groundwater tables. And again, with flooding, this helps. A lot of our waterways today are channelized to try to stop flooding. So instead, what happens is the water usually picks up speed and momentum and then causes problems further downstream. So they really aren't helping with the problem. And depending on where you live, if you live further downstream, they're actually causing what could be more damage, either to natural areas or man-made areas. So riparian zones, again, just kind of let this water collect there, can be slowed down and stored there temporarily, instead of just funneling it all down to another location. Riparian buffers also kind of act as anchors. The vegetation that's in them will act as anchors. Their root systems are usually very dense. If you've ever pulled a tree out of the ground or a small shrub, you can see how much dirt is caught up in those root systems and makes it really heavy to lift out of a hole. In the same way, once these root systems of native trees and shrubs are allowed to grow, they, again, just anchor the soil in place. And this is really important to prevent a lot of erosion or some of the undercutting you'll see in fast-moving streams and waterways. So by having these good, intricate root systems, they keep the soil in place, keep it from being undercut, also keep it from being put into the waterways where the sediment and soil can affect aquatic population. It can mess with fish's ability to find their prey, so it makes the water cloudier, so they're not able to see their prey. It also can clog up their gills, so it makes breathing difficult for some fish species. Sediment also can cover over their eggs or the eggs of the microinvertebrates, the food for a lot of the fish and their wildlife. Sediment can cover these eggs and make it harder for the things that are preying on them to find them. So by having these buffer zones with their really great root systems, this combats erosion. And there's been studies that show, I think I mentioned it before, that a good natural stream bank that has these root systems actually will grow stronger and more resilient as time goes on, where a lot of our solutions for erosion problems, usually we use concrete, steel, or other man-made products that over time will disintegrate or just start to fail, whereas a natural system will make it stronger as time goes on. These areas, the riparian zones, also can act as mini water treatment facilities. So they'll actually filter out the runoff that's coming from all the impermeable surfaces like concrete, pavement, things like that, are nicely manicured, low-cut lawns, those kind of areas where the runoff just runs right off the top of them and into our waterways. These buffer zones will act as a filter, and they can filter out things like trash. So the big pieces of trash you always see stuck in vegetation near waterways. But they also filter out sediment. So again, it's just keeping that sediment from reaching the waterways where it can affect some of the aquatic life, or it can actually change what streams and waterways look like. If the sedimentation is deposited in one area over time, it can change the flow of these waterways. And these riparian buffers also can filter out some of the pollutants that are in the runoff. So things like nitrates and phosphorus, things that are found in a lot of the fertilizers and pesticides. They're also in this runoff. They're picked up along the way. And when they reach the buffer zones, the plants will act almost as like a straw to suck up some of these pollutants. They'll use them in their natural processes as energy. They also can sometimes transform them to less harmful pollutants before they reach the water. And again, this is all kind of like a mini water treatment plant. So it protects the quality of the water. It protects the water if it's a drinking water source. So again, they just act as mini filters to try to get out a lot of these things before they even get to the waterway. Term Phyto Remediation is a term used for planting riparian buffer zones with plants specifically for the purpose of taking up a lot of these harmful chemicals, and again, either just storing them, using them, or transforming them into other types of chemicals that may be less harmful. A lot of riparian buffer zones, you see trees and shrubs hanging over the water. So this is another function of them where they act almost like a canopy to cool the waterways. By doing so, it allows the water to hold more dissolved oxygen. So the higher the temperature of the water, the lower the amount of oxygen in the water, and then it becomes hard for this aquatic life to live in there. So by having it cooled and kept at a nice temperature, you're making it more comfortable for the aquatic life and making the availability of oxygen higher for them as well. And a lot of these trees and shrubs, when they're hanging over the water, they'll have debris, leaf litter, old limbs that fall off, things that add to the water that can add habitat. If it's an old tree that falls in the water, it maybe become home for different types of insects, fish, birds, all different things might use that as a home or a place for security. And leaf litter and other debris from vegetation also adds to the food web. So these become very important sources of food for a lot of that aquatic wildlife. Riparian buffers also kind of act as a home or a habitat for a lot of different types of wildlife. They increase the food sources for a lot of wildlife, including insects, mammals, birds. So again, it's just a nice habitat for them where they have access to fresh water, they have food, they have security from the plants providing them cover. So they really do create nice, safe habitats for a lot of wildlife. And they kind of make what I've heard referred to almost as like rest stop areas. So for migrating birds, migrating animals, they have a place to kind of stop, rest, feel safe, have sources of food and water. I've heard it kind of compared to when you're driving down to Florida And it's really hard to do it all in one shot. You need a place to stop. You need a place to kind of re-energize, maybe catch up on some sleep, get some food, things like that. So it's really similar and just as important to birds and other wildlife that they have these areas located along their migration paths, so they don't become sick or die from just overexhausting themselves. They have a place that's a nice rest area for them, if you will. And also these areas can interconnect with other forested or natural areas. So it just gives like nice corridors to be able to move and again, have habitat and food sources available to them. Another important aspect of riparian zones are the seed banks that are created through them. Because they are such diverse areas with a lot of different types of plants, insects, animals, wildlife, the plants there will create a very diverse seed bank. So they'll drop their seeds in that area, and a lot of times they'll be stored there in the soil. And this is a really important survival mechanism for plants. So if anything should happen, a severe drought, forest fires, maybe even humans coming in and clearing areas, now they have their genetics are stored in these seeds, and they're able to sustain their populations through some of these disturbances, or just make their sustainability more easy for them so that they can continue on throughout the years. They have this nice seed bank to kind of repopulate their area and keep it a nice diverse ecosystem. Another kind of benefit I think from riparian zones is the aesthetic beauty. Whenever I see a painting or a photo of a waterway, it's never a nice mowed lawn up to this area. There's always beautiful trees, forests, shrubs around there. So I think just being able to see these areas and take in the beauty of them is really beneficial to all of us. And they also provide areas for us to go and recreate. So again, if you have these nice, cool waterways with their riparian buffer zones protecting them from the areas around them, you'll have nice fish populations, healthy, large populations for people to go and fish if you enjoy fishing. People can go and walk through these areas and are able to take in nature firsthand, see a lot of wildlife, a lot of birds that maybe wouldn't be there if they didn't have this nice environment for them set up by a riparian buffer zone. We did a project in Gill Creek where we were able to add a few feet to the buffer zone that was already there. And I know a year after we were done with the project, we talked to some residents, and a lot of them said that was their favorite thing now, was to be able to go there with their family, walk their dog just along this strip of native plants. And they were amazed at the wildlife that had come just in that short amount of time. A lot more rabbits, a lot more woodchucks and different bird species that now they were getting to share with their family and see. And that was all just because of having this nice buffer zone, again, to just protect the waterways from farmlands that are around there, from our homes and from our industries. So that's some of the kind of the benefits of the riparian zone and some of the functions of this buffer area. Any questions anybody has?
Thank you, Ron. Yeah, and I do want to, so this is a good time to take a pause and just see if anybody has questions. And just a reminder, so Jackie was talking about this rich sloping fen, this rare habitat that we have here on 5 acres. We're trying to social distance and keep you in the video frame. Very nice. Very good. And then Ron was telling us about riparian buffers, which are that strip of land which hopefully is nice and wide, sometimes is narrow, but of trees, forest, grassland, anything but lawn or pavement, you know, going right up to the water's edge. So that riparian buffer, which is so important to wildlife and to habitat and to us along the waterways. And that was the reading. You guys had a couple of readings. One was the riparian buffer reading. I think it was from Delaware Riverkeeper. It's an old one, but a good one, just talking about the importance of buffers, the width of buffers, and a lot of the topics that Ron was just talking about for not just the waterways, but the health of the land and the wildlife as well.
I like that reading a lot because I think it really does show the importance of the width of them, and it breaks it down even to, depending on how wide your riparian buffer is, the different species that it benefits, and it shows even the minimum width that will increase water quality. So it's like a lot of things, the wider the better, but I like the way that breaks it down and really shows you how important having more of a buffer zone really does help.
Yeah, I thought so too. That's why we use it, because the other aspect there is if you have a protected species or a struggling species, you can actually look at some of the tables they have and see how wide, and you know they're great estimations from riparian scientists to see how wide you need that buffer to be in order to make that animal happy or to make it likely that they'll be able to live there, come there or stay there, maintain their population there. So it's a nice reading.
Another benefit I forgot that speaks pretty much everybody is the economics, especially where we are now up in the watershed. The cleaner your water is, the less work has to be done cleaning it at other avenues farther down the waterway. So the more work we can do to keep our waters cleaner, the more money it saves on eventually cleaning the water and treating it for ourselves to drink and for other purposes. I read a study where it said it costs about 30 cents on average to remove 1 pound of nitrogen through a riparian buffer. So including your cost for planting and maintenance, it's roughly 30 cents to remove a pound of nitrogen. From a water treatment facility, they said on average that's $3 to $5. So right there, that's almost 10 times the cost savings, just removing 1 pollutant from the water. So one of those things sometimes to get people on your side to help you with your projects. It's nice to show them the economic value of having some of these places.
That's really true, Ron, and I think it's really only been the last decade or so, and really maybe the last couple of years, where it's really been common for people to look at what they call ecosystem services as a economic value. And the ecosystem services are cleaning your water that you drink, you know, all these really important things, you know, providing, you know, food in the form of wildlife, things like that. So it is another way that we can kind of calculate the value of protecting land, and that helps us protect land and get support to do that, political support as well. So that really is important aspect. I was also going to mention, just on the riparian buffer front, the Lake Erie Watershed Protection Alliance grant that we got. So specifically for this site, the feeding area for the fen, which is the kind of the little headwater stream, there is a farm pond up above it, which I think you guys may take a walk to, or Jackie's gesturing the direction of it, but there's a farm pond above the little waterway that feeds the fen. And that pond has farming activity right up to it. So, you know, a potential there is for us to get some riparian buffer on the Nature Sanctuary Society property. And then the owner of that land has been really a good neighbor. So to talk to him and maybe get some plants to help him create a buffer there, and talk to him about how that can be done, because he loves being a neighbor to the fen, and he's very interested in the property. So a lot of times people, you know, this isn't stuff that any of us are born knowing. So a lot of times people are really interested in helping out once they know what they can do to help and why it matters. So that's part of what we're doing up here. So did anyone have any questions about the rich sloping fen? I know this is just the introductory part, so it's fine if you don't, but if you have any, now would be the time to either jump in, unmute yourself. Tell me if you can't do that. I'm just looking. I know I muted you, but usually you can unmute yourself and or put something in the chat. Otherwise, so I'm just going to give a brief pause here where we stand and look at each other in case people have any questions, and you can always put them in the chat. I see Alex also put a little link here to the statewide riparian opportunity assessments. That's again that New York Natural Heritage program. It's a great organization. Okay, I think we're good. We're ready to move on, but just let me know, folks, if you have any questions as we go through here, because it is a really unique, interesting habitat. Now, were you guys thinking of moving on to a different spot?
Yeah, I want to introduce you to some of the species in this very rare habitat. And again, right now we're in the Hemlock hardwood forest, and it's absolutely beautiful. Hemlocks are amazing. And we're always watching for Hemlock woolly adelgib. October through June, we watch for that. I have my binoculars for birding, but also for looking for HWA, as we call it. It's a little aphid, and it makes a white cottony mass at the bottom of each of the leaves, so it's pretty easy to spot. And I've been in parts of North Carolina where it just was thick, and we're fortunate we haven't seen any here. We have seen it in Zoar Valley. They treated, the DEC treated about 600 trees there, but in the Alexander and this sanctuary, the Sweetland Sanctuary, our Ishwara Creek, we are keeping an eye out for that because we want to do all we can to protect this very rare place. But this is beautiful in here. It's pretty windy right now, but there's beautiful, the tiny leaves are coming out on the hardwood trees. And then later on, we'll see some wood sorrel, little tiny plant. We see gold thread in here. We see Indian cucumber. Those are just a few of the little plants in the understory. So if you're ready, I think we can move on. We'll move on down the hill and go into the fen, and we can talk about more of the species.
Okay, that sounds good, guys. Ron, I just want to tell you that your sound is getting dicey. So if you guys, I don't know if it's because it's getting windy there, but if you guys could stand as close as you can with the camera and still distance yourselves when you're talking.
Wind is really picking up.
Yeah, we'll just stand closer and hopefully that helps. I'm going to turn the camera off while we're moving.
So Jackie mentioned a couple of interesting plants there. One of them was gold thread. I don't know how much experience our audience here, if you guys have with native plants in the forest, but gold thread is a really interesting one. Almost looks like a little shamrock, little dark green leaves, and the roots are teeny tiny thin golden threads. And they literally look like golden threads. When you break them, they kind of bleed a golden thread, which is a topical analgesic. So you can actually put it on for like a toothache. It numbs your mouth or numbs whatever it touches. So kind of a emergency remedy for toothache. Gold thread is an interesting one. So as Ron is moving along here, just to remind you guys, if you have questions, thoughts about this site, you can post them up. The invasive species that Jackie was talking about was Hemlock woody adelgid. It's woolly adelgid. It's a HWA is another word, another way you'll see it listed. And that's threatening our hemlock trees and our hemlock forests, so we're keeping a close eye out for it. Okay. What do we have here, guys?
All right, so this is an amazing plant called sphagnum moss, and we see a little bit of that here. That's why the fen is called a peatland, just like a bog would be call it a peatland, because this moss just keeps growing on top of itself, and underneath it keeps dying away, and it creates what's known as peat moss. That's what we have underneath. So, and then behind the sphagnum is buttercups, cowslip. It's in the buttercup family. And this is a pretty common plant in marshes and wetlands, but it's absolutely beautiful. It is an edible plant, but in all of our sanctuaries, there's no collecting or no gathering for food, and, unless it's for research and by permission to protect the biodiversity. But there's zillions of cowslips here today. Way beyond the fen, they're just everywhere, and they're really beautiful.
Jackie, is this the same plant that people call Marsh Marigold?
Yes, very same. And again, it's buttercup family.
So this is one of the first to appear.
Yep, they're just starting to bloom. They're really pretty.
I think with that moss, it's hard to see, but the mounds of them are probably 1.5 to 2 feet. They almost look like small boulders covered with moss, but it's actually all moss.
We have a good signal here, Ron. I'm just going to let you know that in case we lose it, that would be a good place to go back to.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're entering the fen, and you can see it's pretty much a round area. It's pretty much a bowl here. There's a little open water. We've tested the pH of the fen right here, and we got readings of 6.8 and 7.2. So this is what happens. A bog is very acidic from all the rainwater, but with this mineralized water coming through in a fen, you have a pH that's around neutral. So, and then there are very wonderful plants that just love all those minerals coming in here. And some of those special plants are orchids. We have 4 kinds of orchids that grow here. And 3 of them are at peak bloom in mid to late June. So you have to come in for our field trip then. And we have showy lady slippers, grass pinks, and rose begonias. And then in the fall, Speranthus cernua, the nodding ladies tresses, that's another orchid that blooms in the fall. And they're just so beautiful. They're very uncommon plants. They're rare. It's just a beautiful sight to see them. We have not just special plants, but special critters in here also. The fauna is amazing. There's a little spider called crab spiders, and they love to hang out on orchids, especially the showy lady slipper and the grass pinks. And those spiders don't build webs at all. They just, they'll go inside the pockets of the orchids or next to the reproductive organs, and they'll just wait there for their prey. So they're passive predators and a little lazy. They don't build webs, but they're pretty smart. And I like to see them in the beginning of the season. They're really tiny, but by the end, they're a lot bigger because they've gotten captured a lot of prey. And they're called crab spiders. Their front legs are very powerful. They can catch prey 10 times bigger than they are. Like they'll capture a big moth and easily with the strength of their front legs. We see them a lot in here. They're fascinating. They can change colors. They can change to yellow or to white, depending on what they're sitting on. So we have another plant here that we see a little bit of in here. We have a bog that's about 5 miles to the southwest, and we see a lot of these plants there, but we see a little bit here in the sphagnum moss. And these are pitcher plants. Here's a very nice community right here of pitcher plants. So they're fascinating. They're filled up with water right now, and they have enzymes. Insects will fall in there, and the enzymes will dissolve them, and that's how the pitcher plants get their nitrogen. And we had a speaker recently at one of our meetings that said they've even found salamanders inside them sometimes, which was really surprising. I'm going to start looking for salamanders, but they're fascinating. This is a very large group right here. They grow in a circle usually, and this is a really amazing community. So lots of the brown you see is cattails. Again, they are a plant that is common in fens. We have all kinds of mosses. We have some buckbean that shows up this time of year. It's not blooming yet. We have beautiful red osier, several kinds of dogwoods. We have alderleaf buckthorn, which is a native plant. It's just really beautiful in here. And you can see it's kind of a circle. It's really a kind of a big bowl.
So Jackie, you guys are walking on a boardwalk, is that correct? So that's keeping you from stomping on the sphagnum moss and the pitcher plants and all our friends in the fen?
Right. If I actually invited our custodian today, but he wasn't able to come. But I want to tell you about this. Each of our sanctuaries has a custodian, and this is a model of stewardship that's been in place since the beginning of the society in 1934. So each sanctuary has a custodian, and our custodian happens to be a carpenter for this preserve, which is very nice because he can keep this boardwalk going, which is important every year to get through here. If we didn't have the boardwalk, we'd be wading up to our waist because it is a wetland.
So the custodians are people who fall in love with these particular preserves and devote much of their lives to looking out for them, checking on them, and doing what needs to be done there, right?
Yeah, it's really a great model because they are on the scene. They can take care of any problems that come up. They do tend to stay custodians for a long time, and they're volunteers. They're remarkable. Their expenses are paid, but they're all volunteer. And they do, one of them told me, Jim Landau told me he loved being a custodian for 10 years at the Houghton Bog. And one time he said, you can never buy a place like this. And they just tend to fall in love with them and really care about them. They can't make their own decisions. All the decisions come from the board, but that's good because it takes a lot of weight off their shoulders, you know, big decisions that need to be made. But again, they're eyes on the scene. They really pitch in to take care of everything. They'll guide tours for us. They'll help pull invasives. They'll just do whatever's needed for the sanctuaries.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's a good model and a kind of a rare model. I would say I'm not sure there's any other. I know Waterkeeper leans very heavily on volunteers, but as far as long-term volunteers taking a particular preserve in hand, that's a really neat model. And like you said, Jackie, I think Jim was over 10 years, right, and working at his preserve.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So any
we have
custodians out there.
I want to tell you about some of the other critters we've seen here. We've seen fox. We've seen checker spot butterflies. There's just as many species that come through here. One thing we do and the custodians help with is we're always keeping species lists. And these are long lists. We have the lichens, the mosses, the fungi, all the wildflowers we've seen, the types of trees, they're all listed. if you got a chance to look at the management plan, the complete lists are in there. But every time we take a tour, every time we're in here, we're always adding to those lists. And it's very important long-term research. We have lists from way back to the beginning, and that's one thing about ownership of these kind of properties for a long time. You can really study them over time. So it's really good research.
That's great. So we can really see the bowl here as Ron pans around. It is a bowl with little drainage in or out here.
Yeah, there is a little stream like we saw coming in from that side in the beginning. There's a little stream going out that way to the west. So there's always this slow movement of mineralized water going through here. It's really quite specific to this type of wetland.
So Jackie, are the pitcher plants active right now? It's awfully cold out, and I know insects are just really starting to move around.
It's a very cool spring robin, and usually this time of year we see their buds, which look like something out of Dr. Seuss. It's like a big red stem with a red ball on top, but I don't see any of those right now. I see tiny little pitcher plants, like you can, there's some babies here, right here. See that?
So I see a baby hemlock tree too on our left there.
Yep, right.
So we're talking about the hemlocks, little baby hemlock, and then folks, if you're not familiar with the pitcher plant, that's those guys with the big opening there that we looked at.
There's a tiny flower, which I'm not exactly sure what that is, but that's pretty lovely. And then right here where my finger is, those are baby pitcher plants. They're really tiny, just getting started, and they're very red. Their chlorophyll hasn't kicked in much. And then these guys over here are older, especially if they're dry. Like this is very old right here.
So when we do hikes at these preserves, often people will spend a very long time in 1 square foot
Right.
looking at these teeny tiny different species all crowded into this really neat.
A little group here around. Here's a little group with a lot of babies. They're very, very tiny. All these little red guys are going to be about 8 inches tall later on in the summer. They send up a blossom. That red bud starts out, and then this right here, yeah, this is a right here is a blossom. This would be full of seeds. So yeah, these are the seeds right here. But about the middle of June, it has a blossom. These are ones from last year. Yeah, it's pretty late spring, I would say, but certainly beautiful anyway.
So Jackie, we mentioned invasive species. Are there invaders that you're particularly concerned about at this site?
Well, I did mention a couple, the HWA, right within the fen. There is some glossy buckthorn, which can get out of hand. There's, we're right on top of our invasives. So I feel very fortunate that we've learned about them in plenty of time, and we're right on top of getting rid of them. So yeah, I'd say right out here though, not too much out here.
That's great.
Yeah, it's good. Yep. So it's very important to protect even 5 acres, a very special habitat. And one thing I like to think about is the 5 acres. There are groups like ours all over the world saving little habitats, and it all adds up. It's fascinating. You know, 5 acres here, 20 there, 100 there, it all adds up. So it's very important, I think, to promote and to support very large groups, but at the same time, people saving these small little gems, we call them, that's also very important strategy too. We can keep an eye on these small acreages in Western New York. We just work in the 8 counties, and but we have our feet on the ground to save these little gems that come up to protect, and it all adds up.
Jackie, are there threats to this fen, even though obviously the land ownership is secure because Nature Sanctuary Society owns it, but are there ecological threats, things that are of concern, or is this place in pretty good shape, pretty safe from your perspective?
My sense is that it's pretty safe, but we have this awareness now, again, of invasive species, of potential runoff from neighboring farms. We're looking into that. We don't know if they are threats, but I'm so pleased that we're right on top of this, checking it out, and to make sure that the invasives, the few invasives that are here don't get out of hand. So it's really good.
Okay. In general, for places like this, I imagine climate change and probably on top of that, just land use, draining, being drained, neighboring properties being drained, probably in general is a threat to this type of habitat because of the dependence on the drainage being just right. Would you think that would be the case?
Well, I think climate change is a factor everywhere, and we certainly have to consider, and yeah, some places some wetlands may be toast someday, but we just have to do the best we can to manage and to be aware of that, and to do whatever's needed to keep this preserve intact. And we'll do it.
That's great. Yeah, we've talked a little bit before about just resilience, helping places to be resilient by, preserving water quality, by making sure that they're not, right on the edge of their ability to function. So I think that's part of it with the riparian buffer and the neighbor education, and just trying to build resilience into places, because we're going to be looking at some changes that may affect water levels and may affect they may stress our preserves in different ways. So I think this resilience is really important, and just owning the property is a huge part of it.
Resilience is a great word. It's a really important word now.
We had a question here from Tom Nicotera. What about water acidification from Midwestern coal burning plants? So I think we're talking acid rain here coming across. Is acid rain really a factor? I know from my work at Waterkeeper that it's not a factor lower in the watershed because we have that limestone buffer. We don't have as much issue with acid rain here because our water is naturally a little bit basic, but I'm not sure about a habitat like this. This habitat is already acidic. Can it be too acidic, or is that not really an issue for us here in Western New York?
Well, this habitat, the fen, is actually alkaline, alkaline to neutral. Yeah, the bog is acidic. As far as acid rain, I think you would see that in the trees, and we have very healthy forest here. I don't see any indications of that, but that's certainly something to watch for.
Yeah, I know that's an issue up in the Adirondacks.
Yeah.
More than we have locally. Okay, good question. Jackie, now I do have, so Ron's just panning around a little bit so you can see the bowl, the edge of the bowl of the fen here. Jackie, I have a couple of pictures that I'm going to be sharing with people on the screen of the lady slipper orchid, which is one of the protected species. So I was wondering is it now a good time for me to do that? Or did you have something more that you wanted to look at right here?
This is a perfect time because we're in their habitat. Yep.
Okay. So they would be growing right here, but not yet. Right?
Boardwalk. And I do encourage everyone to join us for our June trip, if it's going to happen. And that's a June, mid-June to late June is when they peak bloom. And I'm so glad you're going to show those pictures. Those, that picture is by Amy Hogarth. He's on our board of directors. He's Showy lady slippers are protected in New York State. The Cypripedium reginae is the Latin name on there. And they're just absolutely beautiful. One orchid can be about this big. They're just beautiful and large. And even everything about the plant is remarkable. Yeah, there they are. And
Okay. Do you guys see that?
so the little crab spider was talking about, they'll live right inside of those bulbous parts and just hang out there waiting for bugs. Everything about it is beautiful. It's about knee high, and the leaves are fuzzy. The buds in early June are like buttercream yellow color. It's just absolutely beautiful. There are people that would like to poach these. We haven't had a problem with that here, but it is another reason why I've mentioned before that we keep the sanctuaries private, because we want to protect things, beautiful flowers like this.
I was blindfolded and spun around 3 times before I was allowed to enter.
Really good.
And Jackie, our sound cut out from it, but you said these are like knee high. They're really large flowers. These aren't little tiny guys.
The whole plant would be about knee high. Yeah, and then the flower itself is good size. And they're just so beautiful. First time, it just takes your breath away the first time you see them. And they're just lovely.
And this is the pink lady slipper?
This one is called the Showy lady slipper.
Showy, that's right, okay.
Yep.
So Showy lady slipper is our friend here. Now I have one other photo you shared with us, which I believe is a different orchid. Do you mind if I put that one up?
Please do.
Okay. So I accidentally double shared our screen, so sorry, that's why things got crazy there for a second. I shared the wrong thing. Let me share this one here. Okay, and who is this guy here?
So, oh great, there's the spiders I've been telling you about. And that spider right there has changed, that's the crab spider, has changed color to match the reproductive organs of the flower. And that beautiful flower is an orchid called grass pink. We see loads of those here in mid-June. They're just beautiful. Again, the whole plant is about knee high. We've been seeing a lot of white ones. We saw white ones in past years, but usually they're this beautiful rose pink color.
So what is the timing of these friends?
They bloom, peak bloom is mid-June, and they last for about 2 weeks.
So that's the time to be there. And that, I just call attention to that little crab spider. If you guys kind of look toward right, just north of the middle of the photo, he really blends in. But Jackie, you're saying that he has a camouflage coloration, so he can actually change, like a chameleon, he can change.
It'll change to yellow or white. Sometimes they're yellow. And again, that spider is so smart. It's just sitting there waiting for something to come by. And it hasn't spent all that energy to build a web. It just hangs out on orchids. What a life, huh?
Oh, cool. Okay, that was neat. We got our flowers, we've got our fen habitat. We've talked a little bit about riparian buffers. Does anyone have questions for Jackie or for Ron? Any questions? Okay. Well, Jackie, thank you again for joining us. This is such a neat place, and we hope that we get some of our students get to go and visit you and, and our preserves, because they're such special places. And Ron, did you have anything else to add at the end? Jackie, did you have anything else you wanted to add before I talk about?
What an honor again it's been to be with you. And I just am so inspired by young people that want to study nature and protect it. And I wish you all the very best in your study. And thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you, Jackie. So before we leave, folks, I have a couple of announcements I wanted to make. First of all, we're getting towards the end of our class session, Stanley. Next week is going to be our last class. And I do have two things I'm going to be sending you by email. One is the post-test. If you remember, we took a pre-test at the beginning of class. We have a post-test. You're not graded on this, but Ron needs this actually for his grant records, and it's really helpful for us getting funding for this program for you guys to fill those out. So I'm putting out a plea here to please, normally we would make you do this in person so that nobody forgets. But if you could please fill those out, those post tests. And then I also have a survey, and we build this class off of what interests people. We remove classes that are not interesting to people. We add classes, we expand on classes that are, and topics that really hit home for our overarching theme. So we're going to send out a survey also that's pretty specific. And if you guys could provide us with feedback, we'd really, really appreciate it. It makes a big difference. And this is how Ron and I build this class. This is why it is what it is over the years. And it gets better over the years because of you guys giving us that feedback. So please, when I send that in an email, please get them back. I would tell you, it's really hard for us getting them back by email. Most people don't do it. So I'm a little worried about that, because normally we have you in person, we give you pizza, and we bribe you into filling these out for us. So I'm just putting out the plea now. If you guys could please send them back, I'm going to send them in the next couple of days. Class is not over. Next week is really important. Because we have our ECC students have been preparing, despite all the stuff going on in the world, they have been preparing their final projects, and they're presenting those projects to you as a group. So everyone, please join us next week. Not only will we be saying hello, checking in if people have things that they want to talk about from the class that they found that were interesting, or comments they want to make, but I also have 3 presentations from our ECC students. So we'll do that right at the top. It's not going to be a long class. It'll be fairly short, but I do want them to get some feedback from you, and it would be a great vote of confidence with all the work that they put in for you guys to be there. So please join us next week. We have three neat presentations, all environmentally oriented, and our students' environmental projects for the semester. Those are our ECC students. So it'll be a good day next Thursday. And normally we do a party with you. I'm not sure how we're going to do that virtually. I don't know, Ron. We'll have to cook something up. Maybe we can get some live music or something here.
Places in the mailbox.
Wait, pizza in the mailbox? What'd you say?
Slices of pizza in the mailbox. I don't know.
Or wraps. Last year they wanted us to get away from pizza, so I think we did wraps.
Oh, yeah.
Wraps in your mailbox. So it's going to be a good week. Next week we look forward to seeing you, and thanks for sticking with us for this ride. It's been a crazy springtime, definitely a unique one in the entire history of Water Academy. But hopefully folks are feeling well, doing your social distancing, and we'll see everybody next week. We had a couple quick questions here. Can we still volunteer over the summer for Waterkeeper? Ron, what's going on with our volunteer projects?
Unfortunately, there hasn't been much news. We're still trying to figure out what we're going to be able to do. I think most are going to be postponed until the fall, unfortunately. But if we do start having the capability to have volunteer events, we will put it on Facebook, and we will probably send out newsletters to everybody to kind of let them know that there are volunteer opportunities coming up. But so far, it seems like most of them are probably going to be held off until the fall. I know they've been putting on Facebook and other media ideas and ways you can do kind of your own solo sweep. So they put up ideas on how to stay safe, do those type of volunteer activities on your own. But as far as any organized ones, not for the next couple months that I see.
Okay, that makes sense. I know there are citizen science projects that don't necessarily involve interacting with other people that aren't in your household. Cornell Lab of Ornithology has a lot of great bird survey and bird-related citizen science projects, so that might be a place to go to keep active over the summer. And yeah, that sounds good. So that's the plan. Yep, go ahead, Ron.
I know we shared that one before. We do have the citizen science, kind of the water, kind of helping us with our river watch, where we have the app where you can kind of go out and check out local waterways and just share if you see like harmful algal blooms in the summer or a lot of trash in the water, a lot of plastic. If you see anything that just looks out of the ordinary to you, I know there's hashtags that you could use in a specific app. I can share again the class, and it doesn't all have to be negative stuff. Even if you see an interesting animal or some interesting plants, you can snap a picture, and this helps us by being again our eyes and ears out on the waterways. So that really is helpful, especially now where we don't have the normal programming going on that we do. So we still do need people to help us by kind of checking things out for us. But I can share those links to that app again.
Great, thanks, Ron. Alex just actually posted also, check out IMAP Invasives New York. This is cool. I have this app on my phone, and you can actually go out if you get a little bit of plant ID under your belt, so you can identify just some basic invasives like Japanese knotweed or honeysuckle or some of the ones that we talked about. Just get a couple, and they actually have little tools on there to help you with your ID skills. But you can help map. It's a crowdsourced invasive species mapping, which is really helpful for combating invasive species problems. So you can go out and your data, your data goes into the IMAP invasives database, and it's really helpful. They vet it, they check it and vet it, and you can have different levels of IMAP invasives sign in as you go through the process. But that's a good program, and there's going to be more trainings coming up for that. So if you're interested in going out looking at plants, helping with invasive species surveys, that's a great thing that you can do on your own. I just also wanted to mention to you, I sent around in the email last week, Western New York Land Conservancy, which is the group we talked about and talked to when we were on the farm with Steve Blayback at Root Down Farm. They're hosting a Doug Tallamy presentation, and Doug is a kind of a famous native plant guy. He's written a lot of books about native plants, and we've quoted him a lot. He's the one who came up with this idea that if everybody did native plants instead of lawn in the places they weren't actually using as lawn, that it would equal more than all of our national parks. And he had some other really neat ideas and studies, and he's got a new book out, and he's doing a free presentation through Western New York Land Conservancy. So I put the link in there for you guys. It's next Wednesday. But I went to see him speak a couple of years ago, and he is an excellent speaker and just has a really interesting perspective on native plants and native animals and how that network, how important, keeping that network alive is, and how you can do just little things around where you live to help support that whole world.
That was going to be my other recommendation, since maybe volunteering opportunities aren't really prevalent right now. Thinking about doing little things on your own property, maybe a few plants that attract pollinators, or allowing your downspouts to go into your garden or into your lawn instead of on your driveway or patio or something like that. We talked about a lot of different things in this class, just little things you can do on your own property that actually help everybody and help the whole environment. So that was going to be my other recommendation. And I am signed up to see Doug talk, because I've heard his talks are really amazing.
That's right. Okay, so folks, if no one has any other questions or thoughts for the good of the order, we will head out. So I would like ECC students to stick around. I just want to make sure you guys don't have any questions for your presentations next week. So if my ECC people could stay with me here, and everybody else, we'll see you next Thursday for our last class, please. And thank you guys too. Please send back your surveys. Please send back your post tests, so we can get more money to do this program again. And it's great. We'll talk to you all next week. And so I'm signing off. ECC, actually I'm not signing off. You guys can sign off. ECC folks. Ron, if you need to sign off, you can. I don't know if it's raining there and getting your device wet. That's okay. I just want to check in with our ECC friends and make sure they're all set
Okay.
for projects coming up.
All right. See everybody later.
So I'll give a couple, bye Ron, thanks. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes for everybody else to sign off here. Get me back in gallery view. Hi Alex, how you doing? You got Nick. Got Ariana. Again, if you're sleepy, you don't have to put your video on, but as long as you're here. We had Kayla at one point. I think she took off though. She was here for most of the class. All right, guys, I'm not gonna make it long. I know, Allison, you sent me a bunch of stuff, so you guys are like cruising ahead. You've got tons of, I would just, my question to you, and I think I mentioned this in the email, but just make sure that you get us stuff a little bit in advance so we can make sure we're able to share it and not screw that up. Questions, guys? Do you guys have any questions that have popped up for what's going to happen next week?
Not really, no.
Are you okay, Nick? Do you have something that you're going to share?
Yeah, I just had, for the survey, I had to go back and kind of fix up a little bit. And I'm also doing a PowerPoint. So I'm just kind of making sure everything's good. And I'll definitely, if I don't share them tonight, I'll share them with you tomorrow at the latest.
Okay.
But yeah, it's gone.
Good. All right.
Any word from Summer? Has she said anything to you, or because I still have not heard from her?
Yeah, I reached out to Summer and I've got nothing. So I think
I don't know how grading between both of us is gonna go, but
it's gonna be you, Nick.
okay. And you guys say I was going last?
Yes, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay. So, yeah, it's so also because you're going solo, you know, and unexpectedly solo, we're gonna grade you very gently.
Yeah. I'm just gonna try and do as much as I can, get as much information out there, and just see how it goes.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. Hi Kayla, I see you. Anybody else has questions? So Ariana, I know we were planning on having you go first, and then Allison and Kayla, you guys are in the middle. Everybody still okay with that?
Yep.
Do you guys have any questions about what you're gonna, Ariana, are you doing a PowerPoint?
No, I don't think so. I might share a couple of things on my screen, but for the most part, I'll be talking. I think I'm gonna do like more of a field one just because Grass Island's right down the street from me. I think I'm just gonna like do it from one of the little lookout points and then have some stuff kind of like next to me, like printouts of my sign, like large ones or something like that.
So here's a thought, guys. I think we need to all sign in about 15 minutes early because I want to make sure we can give you guys the power to share. Like, I'm not the host. Ron technically is a host because we're using the Waterkeeper account. So I want to make sure that we can share screens with all of you and that it's not limited to like me or like one other person, unless Alex, you already know that. I don't know if you guys have done that yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not sure on that one.
Okay. So let's all at least be on by 3:45. So that we can make sure we can get you all shareable, because if you can't share, and I guess as our plan B, because we don't want to be fiddling with technical stuff like while we're on, So our backup plan will be to just make sure that I have all your stuff. And I'm also going to share that with Ron. I have a specialist appointment, so I'm going to be hustling to get back in time. So if I'm not here right at the bell, there's nothing I can do about it. That was the only day they could take me. So I hopefully will be back here in time. If not, Ron will be sharing. So I'm just going to make sure he has everything. I have everything. Hopefully we'll be able to have you guys screen share, and yeah, we'll be able to rock it out. It's going to be cool. And you know, DoorDash, that's not a bad idea. If people want to send their addresses and Waterkeeper can fund it, we'll send you pizza. Normally we have a party, so sorry you guys aren't getting your graduation party. But so Allison, Kayla, how about you guys? Is there anything you need, or are you in pretty good shape? You're both muted. Hang on, sorry. Did I mute you?
Here we go. Sorry.
Okay.
Now she's muted again.
No, I muted. No. There we go. That was
Am I on mute?
no. You're good.
We had to fight like a whole sewer of rats to collect our data. It was insane.
What?
But we got it, yeah.
This sounds like a good story to tell.
Oh, I think
Allison, are you beside yourself? All right. So, we have rats. We have water quality data. We have scary stories, but we have.
yeah, we did get it. We did test a bunch of different things in it.
Oh, Allison, I cannot hear you. Why? You're not muted. Can you turn yourself up? I thought you were just speechless, but it's just it's just that we can't hear you. I thought it was the rats. All right, it's okay. It's probably, you may have like your volume of your mic down or something. So try and check that just in case it's on your end. Because right here, I am not showing you muted. So just double check that, you know, before we do presentation, because that will be sad if we can't hear you. But, okay. I don't know if you want to, Allison, if you want to tinker with that now, we can. Otherwise, we can just all say goodbye and you guys can figure it out. And I realize that wasn't a yes or no question. Okay. All right, folks. I'm still getting used to this. I'm an in-person person, so this is a little challenging for me. But I will. I'll see you guys. If there's nothing else, I will see you all next week.
All right. Thank you,
Stay strong.
buddy.
Bye, guys. Be well. Bye, Alex. Okay, Allison, do you want to see if we can get this going, or do you want to do this on your own time? I don't mind helping you if there's a... Yeah, there's no sound. And you are not muted. I'm just wondering if you're like, somehow your mic is either turned off. It's weird because I'm actually showing a mic icon, which like if your mic is turned off, usually I don't see that icon. So it makes me think that somewhere you have a volume or a mute setting that is.
Okay.
Oh, you're there. You're on.
Yeah, I needed to do something with the administration on my laptop. I don't know. I fixed it though.
All right, sweet.
All right.
Okay, see you next week.
Bye.
Take care.